Hi, this is Bob Miller. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Global Data Systems, and I'm here today to talk about security maturity level framework, which we use as a method for engaging customers and or executives about cybersecurity. So everybody asks, why do we need to know the framework? Bob, why do we need to know the framework, man? I mean, there's frameworks everywhere. There's NIST, there's CIS controls, there's Cyber Defense Matrix, there's frameworks all throughout the cybersecurity ecosystem. There really is. We developed this particular framework because we just needed it. Security is hard to discuss with normal businesses, who are not in our field of study, right? Who are not managed service providers. If you're just talking to any business that you run into, security is a very difficult discussion to have with them because there's so much technology associated with it. It's not something you can get your hands around and look at and hold up against the light and find out what's good about it, what's not good about it. There's none of that. It's not tactical. It's not tactile in any way. So it's a very hard discussion to have with businesses. We needed a layman's way to kind of engage with people that didn't have all that terminology and technology language just jammed into it. We try to break these things down as much as we can to something that's more of a layman's sort of an approach to discussing this framework, though, does really allow organizations to kind of look at things in terms of a phased approach of adoption. In other words, you're never going to be able to afford the full strategic plan for cybersecurity all in one run. You can't implement it that quickly. You usually can't afford to pay for it that quickly. So you need some way to phase these elements in as you sort of evaluate your risk, and do a risk assessment, and you evaluate your IT risk, figuring out which assets you want to protect first and then phasing that in. It's all part of developing the cybersecurity strategy, which is the purpose of the framework, is to help to be able to do that. And like as we point out, it really does create a strategic discussion. So what does a security maturity level actually even mean? And really what it gets down to is it's just the level of adoption and investment in your security strategy. These elements are all here as a part of this framework, but and by the way, there's nothing magic in this framework. All I did was categorize all of the elements that we have as part of our cybersecurity ecosystem, the different layered approaches to security, and broke those out, and then put common sense sort of language around them so that you can have a decent discussion about it. So as you adopt these different tactical exercises in cybersecurity, which increase your security posture in an incremental way, then they represent an investment in a cybersecurity strategy and your adoption of that tactic, right? And then every one of these levels, or every one of the pieces of these levels, all require system, processes, people, procedures, the whole nine yards, right? So that when you achieve a particular level of maturity, you have had to put a lot of systems, processes, policies, procedures in place and train a lot of people. That's just part of what is the physics of getting a cybersecurity strategy in place. These things represent a security in depth architecture. We all know that these multi-layered approaches are the ones that succeed. We're not in the business of preventing things from happening outright, because we know we're not going to no one is going to be able to prevent an incursion of some type into your organization. It's going to happen. It's not a question of if, it's just a question of when. So these layered security strategies, though, mitigate the risk and decrease the damage that can be done, by these incursions, and then speed your recovery from them. That's really what all of these cybersecurity tactics do, is minimize the risk, speed the recovery. That's really what it comes down to. This framework is a baseline to measure yourself against. So it gives a company or an organization something to measure themselves against, which helps everything works better when you're able to measure yourself and manage yourself against a rubric of metrics, right? So this allows you to have your own personal metric to measure yourself against. And it aids in the decision-making process for budgeting, obviously, because of the phased nature of implementing any security strategy. So what's the security maturity level 0 look like? Well, this is going to look really familiar to any of you guys that are providers, for sure. And most companies, They don't really have a security strategy, a cybersecurity strategy. They don't realize that they need a cybersecurity strategy. It's not something that anybody's ever really conveyed to them, that they really need to think of this in terms of an IT strategy. First of all, you have to consider IT a strategic initiative in your organization. And once you do that, then it's a clear next step to say, well, that cybersecurity is a part of the IT security strategy for your organization. And you just have to go through the process of defining how much of this you're going to adopt and when for the benefit of your company, right? Most companies really don't have a security strategy, don't really think of it in terms of that. They're typically buying off the shelf point products that are just kind of defaultly configured, have a default configuration, and they're using that. They're missing the big three. I call this the big three. So device inventory list, every device that's on your network, everything's connected to your network. Topology mapping, that's your network segmentation and how you have it constructed, and then your routing maps that are associated with it. Your IP management discipline, the whole 9 yards, that's your topology mapping. And then a change management process, because even if you do the first two, device inventory and topology mapping, if you don't have a change management process in place, then it's going to go out of date almost immediately. So typically people who are in this category have no patching discipline. They're not retaining logs on any kind of consistent basis or for any consistent length of time. They're not really doing configuration management. They're not really using user security training, that kind of coaches people through phishing and what not to do in that environment and that whole ecosystem, how not to pick up memory sticks at conferences and just shove them in your laptop indiscriminately. That's a no-no. And then they're only using MFA, but only in a fractional, or in some cases not using it at all. Those are people who are kind of wrapped around this axle of security maturity level 0. We have a company that we work with as a partner that can talk to enterprises about their cybersecurity. We partner with Fifth Wall, and Fifth Wall is an agent for about 43 different underwriters. And the reason we like working with them is we're not in the insurance business. They can talk to customers about comparing their cybersecurity policies to best practice cybersecurity policies, and they'll do that for free. And then being able to give advice about what they really should have set as possible limits and or coverages in their policy that might be lacking from a standard cybersecurity policy from an underwriter you've known for a lot of years who may not be a specialist in cybersecurity. The reason we like dealing with Fifth Wall again is because they have knowledge of all that and can help educate our customers on it. But their minimum requirements as a underwriter, as an agent to an underwriter, they have requirements before any of those underwriters will take you on as a cyber insurance customer. And those are multi-factor everywhere, like it's supposed to be done. Segregated backups that are encrypted. In other words, they're not sitting there with the production server. Your backups aren't sitting on the same box as your production backups, and they're encrypted. They're somewhere else. They're geo-diverse in their location. Endpoint detection and response, which is, standard malware, antivirus, and DNS protection. That's what's encompassed in that endpoint detection and response. And then some sort of cybersecurity training for your users. That's really critical to be able to have that in hand before you even go try to get cybersecurity insurance, with cyber insurance, whether with your current underwriter or with a new underwriter. So in the next segment, we're going to start covering the security maturity level 0. So I will see you in the next set. Thanks.